Very good morning, everybody, and welcome to the third in our current sort of updates on all of the All In actions. We've kind of done them in reverse order because we're ending with Action 1, which was the very first action we launched back in 2021. And delighted to see all of you on the call today. We've got, as usual, we've got kind of an update on the data from 2023, which is the last All In census we did. Just to set the context for this conversation, and then we're going to hear from a brilliant panel about the sponsorship programme, which I'm going to tell you a bit more about today. And do have some questions ready for those speaking on the call, because we'll sort of save about 10 minutes at the end of the session for that. And although this is the last in our kind of update of the actions that we've been looking at in the All In Action plan, we are convening for the first time in person all of the All In Champion companies in February. I think it's February the 12th. Is that right, Etty? Or is it later?
It is February the 12th.
Woo. So that's a morning session at OMG, and all welcome. I mean, I think it'd be really nice to extend it to people that are thinking about becoming an All In Champion. It's an opportunity for all the companies that have got that status just to get together, share the impact in their business, and actually help us sort of drive this program forward as well. So a really important morning for all of us, but we'll tell you a bit more about that at the end of the call. So without further ado, and just to remind everyone, it's being recorded, so you can share this with colleagues afterwards. Please go on mute if you're not already, and then obviously unmute if you want to ask a question. But I'm going to hand over first of all to Dan Wilkes, Director at Crados, to give us that all-important data from the All In census to set the context.
Yeah, thanks, Sharon. Good morning, everyone. I've just got a few slides to share. There's an overview of the key findings from All In 2023 in relation to Black talent. There we go. Does that look good for everybody?
That looks great. Thanks, Dan.
Excellent. So just a quick recap for anybody who's been on these calls before, this will be familiar. So we had almost 19,000 responses to the All In census in 2023. That's obviously a really good sample of people. It's the largest survey ever recorded for the advertising marketing industry, and it's the largest, I keep saying this and I'm pretty sure it's true, it's the largest D&I survey of any industry in the UK. And obviously it's a real testament to the engagement that we receive, both from people working in the industry and from all of the businesses and companies supporting the initiative and the research. So in terms of Black talent, we had a response of 740 Black people in 2023. That was a higher number than 2021, so really good, and that's a really good sample size. And there's a breakdown of different backgrounds there. So Black African was the highest response, Black Caribbean, and then other Black background there. So a good mix of different backgrounds and a good numbers in each of those. So we are able to do some analysis by different Black backgrounds on different characteristics. So if we look at representation overall, we see that 4% of the All In respondents were from were Black, 8% Asian, 5% mixed race, and 18% overall from a minority ethnic group. If we compare that to the UK population, you'll see that it actually looks quite positive. You know, that they're either higher or the same as what we're seeing in the UK population. And whilst I say that looks quite positive, there are two key kind of counterpoints to that. The first is that, as we know, the industry is largely concentrated in London. And if you compare the London working population across those ethnicities, you can see that the industry is significantly underrepresented, representative of those ethnic minorities, particularly Black talent, 11% versus 4%. And the second area is representation falls off dramatically when we get to C-suite positions. So you can see representation in C-suite drops to 2% for Black people, and similar drop-offs across other ethnic minorities there. So those are the kind of the two issues against representation, though overall against the UK population, working population, it looks quite good. So a kind of a key area to consider is also occupational segregation that we see in regards to black talent. So on the left here, we've got the functions and the job roles where black talent are overrepresented. No surprise, you can see diversity and inclusion roles there, a very high representation. But if you look after that, you've got legal, HR, finance, operations, ad tech, all being overrepresented by black talent. And you can see the kind of the key relationship there is they tend to be kind of more operational sort of support services rather than advertising kind of front line. And areas where there's significant underrepresentation are production, events, and the C-suite, as mentioned there. So that's another element and a facet to consider. We ask about 50 different measures of kind of experience and company culture. And to be honest, the vast majority of them are more negative amongst our black respondents. I've just pulled out a few highlights or kind of key differences here. So black people are much less likely to feel they belong at their company. So 59% versus 71% in the all-in average. They're more likely to feel left out at work. That's a third of black respondents said they are likely to feel left out at work. Most employees, we asked whether employees feel comfortable being themselves at work. And again, the figure was much smaller for black respondents there. So just 63% of black people said they feel comfortable being themselves at work. And this is a real kind of damning stat finally here, is that we ask people whether they see people similar to themselves in leadership positions across their company. So that kind of role model point. And just 20% of black people agree with that statement compared to 62% in the all-in average. So a huge difference there in response to that question. We also ask about workplace experiences. So these are all things that people say that they have experienced in the last 12 months. And again, we've probably got about 20 of these experience indicators. And again, black people tend to report more negatively on most of them. So made to feel uncomfortable in the workplace, 21% of black people said, yes, that's happened to me in the last 12 months, compared to just 14% on the all-in average. Undervalued compared to colleagues of equal competence, again higher for amongst black respondents. And getting on to some kind of more serious behaviours here, bullied or undermined in any way. 15% of black people said, yes, that's happened to me in the last 12 months. Again, higher than the all-in average. And then racial discrimination, 14% of black people said they'd experienced that in the last 12 months at work. And that is obviously significantly higher than the all-in average at 2%. And that does mean that of all the characteristics that we include in all-in, black people are the most likely to have experienced discrimination in the last 12 months, with 14% as mentioned. That's followed by Asian people, then Muslims, and then women. So obviously not good news there. Still significant minorities that are experience direct discrimination in the workplace. Some kind of slightly good news is that all of those figures are down from 2021. So you can see there 22% of black people experience racial discrimination in 2021. So there does seem to be positive movement, though obviously the numbers are still too high. Finally, we ask a question about whether people are likely to leave the industry due to a lack of inclusion or discrimination. And the red bar is 2021 results and the blue bar is 2023 results. And you'll see that amongst black talent, 30% said that they were likely to leave the industry due to a lack of inclusion or discrimination in 2023. And that's higher than any other ethnic minority. And is pretty much the same as 2021, 32% in 2021, whereas you can see for Asian, mixed race, and ethnic minorities overall, there was a more significant decline in those answering likely to leave to this question, whereas the black figure is much more consistent between the years. And that's a quick overview there. Obviously, we've got lots more data around this issue and all of the others in All In. So do get in touch with me if you've got specific questions or you'd like to see something in a bit more detail. And I'll hand you back to Sharon, or maybe Itty.
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 Thanks, Dan. Itty, over to you.
Thank you. Hopefully you can see these. I just wanted then, following Dan's wonderful kind of recap on the 2023 data, to remind everyone of the action plan, which hopefully you are quite familiar with at this point. As Sharon mentioned, the Action for Black Talent was something we introduced right at the very beginning. And since then, we've obviously grown the action plan out, adding in other demographics. But the first three actions, as many of you will have heard, went through an update in May of 2024. So we're really pleased to have updated some of the action plans, and more updates are to come. But for this session, of course, we are specifically focusing on the Action for Black Talent, which is to invest in a sponsorship program. As we've seen, the experience of Black talent in our industry can be different in that there are less or limited opportunities to progress, some feel. So we thought about how we could make sure that businesses are specifically supporting Black talent in their career development. So your sponsorship program could be something that's delivered in-house or externally, as long as there's a specific focus on kind of development, career progression, and opportunities of the Black colleagues in your workplace. That's what we're asking for. And alternatively, are you bolstering your retention and attraction strategies for Black talent in the workplace as well? So that's just a recap. But to understand more about sponsorship and to talk a bit more about the BRIM sponsorship program, I'm really pleased to welcome Natalie Tribe from Meta, the global industry lead. She'll talk a bit about the BRIM sponsorship program and what BRIM's doing to support in this area. And then she'll be joined by Louise and Henry, who have previously taken part in a sponsorship program. And it'll be great to hear their kind of insights and their experiences of taking part in such a program. So I'll hand over to Natalie now.
Thank you, Itty. Hello, everyone. So pleased you were able to make it to this session. I love coming after Dan and all of his data because it just shows why we exist and why we focus on the programs that we focused on. So I'll talk a little bit about sponsorship and why we think this is a really important tool to help address some of the stats that you saw just now. So sponsorship is a practice that has been proven to work for anybody in the workplace, because what it does is it gives you access to a senior leader in your organization who has got the visibility and the influence to help you achieve your goals. It's very hard if you're sitting in a mid-level position and you are trying to not only make it to a different level within your organization or understand what opportunities might be open to you. If you have access to a senior person who can help make some of those inroads for you, it is definitely a game changer. And we focus on sponsorship because it has the key element of mentorship, which is somebody who can give you the benefit of their experiences, but it also has that element of action on behalf of the senior leader. So rather than just a situation where you are given advice, although that is a very important part of it, it isn't just advice for you to action. It is a curated plan of milestones that is developed with your sponsor, and that your sponsor also bears responsibility for actioning. And that's where we see the real differences. So the power of the program is that there is a period where both the sponsor and the sponsee sit down together and they talk really honestly and plan about short-term, mid-term, and long-term goals. We've seen throughout the 2 cohorts of the program that we've run so far that one of the key elements is at the beginning of the journey, you may not know exactly what you're trying to achieve. You may know that you want progression. You may know that you want to experience different departments or different sort of experiences that you haven't had access to, that you want greater visibility, that you want to create a greater internal or external network or build a personal brand. But in terms of what that looks like, and the fact that you don't know what you don't know, the sponsor then steps in and says, have you thought about this? I know that this is an opportunity. This could potentially be a stretch goal for you. Could you come to this conference with me? We can talk about you in the leads meeting and see what we might be able to get you access to. So that's the secret sauce that you can't do by yourself. So the program itself is a 9-month, high-touch, fully facilitated program which combines expert-led training sessions on a range of topics, sponsor and sponsee pair activities, so milestones that you will complete together each month or each 2 months to make sure that you are actually driving towards an end goal. Tools and guides to make sure that this development is very structured and you always know what you are doing and what you should be doing. And it's really designed to dismantle some of those barriers that you might be finding in your career and to accelerate your career growth, whether that is on an upward level or a lateral level. The idea is by the end of the program, you have a better sense of where you want to be, your connection within the company, and what your path is going forward. Because ultimately, this is a progression tool, but it's also a retention tool. Some of those frictions that are causing attrition within our businesses, we're trying to solve by making people closer to the business and to feel like they're getting more from the business. So our focus is definitely on creating access, visibility, and advocacy for Black talent. And our workshops cover a range of topics, including maintaining a growth mindset, goal setting and building your career roadmap and making sure you're actually moving down that roadmap, self-confidence and personal branding. So since the pilot program, we've evolved the program in a number of ways. So for the increasing access piece, we have partnered with AdWanted to provide access to their conferences, guidance for the cohort on how to position themselves for public speaking opportunities and demonstrate their expertise in their fields. And we've also, as part of that, invited the cohort to apply to speak at next year's conferences. There's also more opportunities to network in person. So who is the sponsorship program for? We have focused it on mid-level Black professionals in marketing, advertising, and media industries for the sponsees. And sponsors are any related senior person within those individual organizations. Now, mid-level is a very it's a very tenuous term, right? When I say mid-level, there is no particular amount of experience that you may have. We've got people with 8 years experience, 5 years experience. We have people with 20 years experience. The most important thing is that their sponsor is at least 2 levels above them and has that visibility and that influence to help drive their career forward. So I'll just mention some of the challenges that are faced by Black talent within our industry that we're helping to try and redress and that have come up in our workshops and the meetings that we have with our cohort. So they have brought up limited access to influential networks. They have brought out bias and prejudice, which is hindering their visibility. Most importantly, lack of senior sponsors actively supporting their careers. And I think any senior person can point to a senior person somewhere in their career journey that has helped support their career and advocated for them. We're just formalizing that process. Training on addressing biases and career planning. That goes for both sponsors and sponsees. And then just simple tools for network building, setting stretch goals. How can they do more with what they have? How can they increase their scope? How can they really demonstrate the impact that they're having internally, which will help them move forward? So after that overview, I'm really excited to bring in Henry Rowe from OMG and Louise Tricos-Lewis from PhD, who are on our first pilot program and who can give you straight from the horse's mouth the breakdown of their experiences. So Henry and Louise, hello, great to see you again. I'd like to ask you both why you decided to get involved in the BRIM sponsorship program. Henry, let's go to you first and then to Louise.
Sure, yeah. I think quite a lot of things you've already touched on, but I think from a personal point of view, it's just a fundamental belief in the power of sponsorship and peer learning. Natalie, you touched on it there. You said there are lots of examples of senior people who can reference a mentor or a sponsor that's helped them get there. And I just think it is a really important part of our industry, or I guess any industry, and has a really practical output. Dan was talking earlier about 20% of Black talent at leadership positions. programs like this are really practical ways of shifting those stats and shifting that internal behavior and shifting that, that perception, but also actually changing the dynamics of the business. You need to have these sort of proactive programs. So I just think it's just a really, I just fundamentally believe in helping other people and having formalized programs in place. I was thinking a bit wider about this actually. Obviously you were coming on the call. I think I don't know if this is the right forum, but for a political term, but I feel like I'm a liberal. I think I was thinking about this before, and you go, I think I'm just a liberal person, which is wanting to help other people, open up opportunities for other people, and can't really think of why people wouldn't want to do that. So it just seems like a really it's a simple question, but it's like also has quite a simple answer, which is why wouldn't you want to sort of help and progress this talent and have a sort of forum for us? I just believe in programs like this and their practical outputs.
Fantastic. Louise? Louise, you're on mute, I think.
Yes, sorry. Thank you. Prior to BRIM, I'd been involved in various mentor programs, both as a mentor and as a mentee. But the BRIM opportunity was the first time a sponsorship scheme opportunity had ever kind of come before me. And I do think today there are a lot more development programs and schemes and opportunities that exist than when I was kind of earlier in my career. So I was really intrigued by a scheme where I wasn't too experienced to apply. I've worked in the industry over 20 years. So it really felt that BRIM offered an opportunity to, achieve my career goals, which were about enhancing my work practices and exposure, but also accommodating that intersectionality with my age and experience.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's the point that I was trying to make before, in that, this is of benefit to people of all levels. And for someone like yourself, who's senior in the business, that has 20 years experience, there is still something to be gained. And our hope is obviously that you and other sponsees will come back as a sponsor and help pass on your experiences, both on the program and throughout your whole career, to again help people to progress to where they want to be. So if you could, having done this, are you able to articulate what you think the difference between sponsorship is from mentoring, and how you try to put that into implement that in your relationship?
Yeah, I think I mentioned this last time as well, that when I've seen Karen Blackett, who's the ex-president of WPP, talk about how valuable it is to have your own kind of like personal cheerleaders that sit outside your immediate work function and that sit outside your immediate direct line management. I really truly felt that BRIM was a great way to almost like grow my own cheerleader squad outside of those spaces. So for me, sponsorship is very much about having a personal champion of your own professional achievement. In addition to listening and offering advice and guidance, sponsors can take an active role in putting you or connecting you with people, or putting you in situations that will be beneficial. And just, as an example, Henry connected me with like wider RMG colleagues and like events and experiences that I wouldn't have had the opportunity to be involved in or attend otherwise.
I think I definitely echo the practical side of it. I think really personally that works for people like me, where you feel like you've got an action plan, you're helping, you can see practical outputs, you can see changes in how people experience work. So I think the practical side and the actionable side is really important. I think there's a two-way aspect as well. I think it's important to make clear on forums like this, you get as much out of it as you put in as well. So so I got a lot out of it, as well as Lou hopefully got something out of it. So there is that two-way aspect as well, which is really important, because you learn as much as you put in. And I think there's although you say that people are on different professional levels, I feel like on sponsorship you're at the same level, and you're just having a sort of human relationship. So you don't sense that there is this sort of, this leveling. And I know you sort of said that mid-level is very broad. Yeah, I don't even sort of that really goes out of your thinking. I think it's very sort of practical, it's actionable. You feel like a partnership rather than mentoring, which feels maybe a little bit more top down.
Yeah, and I think that is such a good point, and that's come up a number of times from our sponsors saying that, that is that partnership and that feeling like, especially because you're outside of each other's direct line of leadership, that coming together and getting to know each other and becoming partners in this is a really important piece. But we've also had a lot of participants, especially sponsors, express apprehension about taking part. They're worried about, what am I going to be able to deliver? Like, am I set up to have the conversations that we're going to have? So I'd love to hear from both of you on any apprehension that you had coming in or throughout the program, and what you would say to people thinking about taking part in the program who might be a little bit worried.
Yeah.
Oh, did we lose Lou? I'm sure she'll pop back in. Henry, do you want to take it in the meantime?
I'm sure she will. That seems like classic work or working from home Wi-Fi. Wouldn't be a meeting without that, would it? Without someone popping out or someone unmuting at the wrong time. Excuse me. I think so. From taking part, there was no question. Like, there'd be no apprehension about taking part. The concept of it, do you want to get involved with this? It was like a real privilege. It's an amazing thing to get involved with. You could see the impact it would have. So there was no apprehension at the beginning. I'd say, being really candid, there were two areas that you then maybe get a little bit of apprehension around. One is saying the wrong thing.
Yeah.
So you have this little thing in your head around, like, you're actively listening, you're sort of trying to take notes, you're trying to give some advice, but you're also conscious of what you might say and how you might say it, and that's always there a little bit, I think. And the other thing is, we talked about this in where I sit. There's a few sponsors. Is the really fine line between active promotion and sort of getting that wrong, like, going too far and sort of saying, this wasn't an example for Lou and me, but putting someone forward for a role or sponsoring an interview. There's active help, and there's sort of maybe going a bit too far on that side of things. So I think those are two dynamics that cropped up. They weren't a real barrier, because there was no apprehension to getting involved, and you could see the impact of the program. But those are sort of two dynamics that you're sort of managing as you're going through, or that I did anyway. Sorry, Lou, I'm talking for you, as I think you disappeared.
Yes, apologies. My laptop has just decided to do an update, and I came now, not now, but it wasn't happening.
Welcome to Omnicom.
But yes, thank you. There was no apprehension about taking part in the scheme, and Henry might have touched on this already, but we were aware that we would be matched. Many of us would be matched with sponsors who are not of colour. But I think it took about 3 meetings before I brought up the subject of race, because I think it's just not something just used to talking about, just generally in a professional context. And so, but I think once we did have that conversation, it was really valuable. And I remember, Henry asking questions, and I think it was really good once I kind of got over that. But it wasn't an apprehension about the scheme, but I think the scheme encouraged those kinds of discussions, which I think, sometimes we have a tendency to shy away from.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the reason that we have a workshop on, how to manage your apprehension about saying the wrong thing, what do you do if you do say the wrong thing? How do you have conversations about race? Is because we don't do that in the workplace. And I think if we are going to actually be honest and dismantle systems that we think might be affecting populations within our businesses, we have to talk about it, and we need to share that with our senior leaders, and we need to confront it. So we hope we are helping you to do that. But ultimately, this is a talent development program, and your conversations will be largely focused around what you're trying to achieve and how you can help each other do it. So what was the journey like? Like, how did the program work between you both, and how's the relationship been since you finished?
Yeah,
terrible. It's awful. Go on, Liz, you first. You.
I think Henry and I were pretty good at ensuring that we carved out and that we dedicated the time to meet well in advance and protecting that time. I think we were quite disciplined in that respect, and that was really helpful. I do remember speaking perhaps with some other people on the scheme where obviously the closer it kind of gets to certain deadlines, then it can be a bit harder, you know, to get that time in. But I think because we had protected that time, we'd carved it out in advance, that worked really well. And the programme was very structured, so that was useful for keeping us focused rather than it being just a chat. But I should just say that we had plenty of chats outside of the programme. But I think that structure was really good at maintaining the momentum and kind of like providing those working and talking points for us to operate around.
Yeah, I think like anything, I think you touched on Natalie, and I think maybe Dan did. If you formalise the time and the focus, you can sort of do anything. This is just one example of that. As long as you make the time and you invest in it, then you get a lot out of it. I think Lou, you're talking now about race. I think my summary of what was a journey like is it gets better. Like it's a little bit funny at the beginning, and you're sort of feeling it out, and then it does like get better and better. I know that people sometimes sort of or struggle, or they fed back on the forums that they don't know what to talk about in the first meeting and don't know what to say. So I think the overall feeling is it gets better. I remember someone saying to me, not about this, that I'm a bit like a talk show host, as in as in asking questions. You know, if you sit with someone and you take an active interest, I think as long as you do that, as long as you're human and you just have that sort of interest in someone else, don't maybe overthink it, then it's fine. But it takes a little while. It takes a few sessions.
And we definitely still meet up and we still connect. Like actually last summer, my line manager left, and like Henry reached out, which I really appreciated, by the way, Henry, thank you. You know, to say, big changes around a similar time. We kind of knew, or a little bit later on, we knew our CEO was leaving, so he'll kind of like reach out, with those big news, kind of said, do you fancy a chat? And I do really appreciate that. But yeah, I think it's great that we have that connection and we still continue to meet outside of the programme.
That's exactly what we want to hear. But if you had to sum up what you each consider the main value or benefit of taking part in a programme like this, or, in whether it's a BRIM sponsorship programme or any sponsorship programme, what would you say?
For me personally, developing that network outside of like my usual sphere, my working sphere, was really useful. I think the other thing that was really interesting is that, like Henry's experience isn't actually too far removed from what I do, but our paths have just never crossed before. So I think we need lots of people within the industry, need lots of contacts. I think that it also really helped in kind of putting me in contact with people who were useful, for me to connect with, but also outside of, my day-to-day. And I was promoted to the PhD board last February, and one of the reasons that I was given as to why that happened was because of my relationships with people within the group. And so for me personally, that I've really felt like, wow, BRIM played a huge role in like delivering on that. And so that was that was incredible for me. But for me, it's definitely the connections and the people that I've made. I think OMG is a really great operating company in that it's so collaborative compared to other places I've worked where the agencies can be a bit siloed. And so being able to fully lean into that collaborative spirit, I think has been invaluable.
I think it sort of splits into two areas for me. There's and we've touched on some of these points, but from a personal point of view, it's a win-win. I think we have to sort of reiterate this on the call, which is you do both get a lot out of it. I think that's That's really important. You can really feel that, and then you're a better person for it. And it's not just your relationship with Lou, it's your relationship with other people around the business. So it has a wider impact on you, which is a positive thing. So that's sort of personal enhancement. And the second thing is the obvious one, which is the big picture sort of strategic enhancement of you're trying to help solve a problem that you saw in Dan's stats earlier. Like there's a problem, there's a challenge, and you can have an impact on that. So there's that sort of, there is a personal enhancement to it, but then you are pushing something for the greater good that you might have, it might have an impact on wider community outside of your one-on-one relationship. So it's just really positive on both sides. It's set up really well to do that.
Fantastic. I know we're close to time and want to leave some time for questions, but I just want to say personally how great it is to hear from both of you and how the journey went. And my goal is just to keep improving the program so that everyone that takes part in it can have that greater impact, and we can start to see that impact in companies and in the industry. I'll hand back over to you, Sharon.
Thanks so much, Nat, and thank you, Louise and Henry. I mean, it was just sharing your with sort of candor and insight into your experience. Thank you so much for doing that. Really brings it to life for everybody else. There are two really interesting comments actually in those sort of questions in the chat. Conscious we've got about 6-7 minutes. Be good to get your views. So any tips on combating, I guess, the allegation or assertion that this might be discriminatory in itself as an action? Really interesting take on that. What are both of your, all three of your views on that?
Do you mean is it discriminatory because you're focusing on one?
Yeah, that's my take on it. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
Ryan, you
yeah.
might want to jump in, but that's how I
I
understand.
think you could sort of levy that if life was fair and everything was equitable already, and there were all the right representations in senior positions, and if everything was perfect in the society and the industry working, then you go, yeah, well, you don't really need this. And I think it's one of those programs where you go, you're looking forward to the day when you don't need the program, right? Because then you won't need to do it. Very clearly right now, whether it's with the stats from Dan or Natalie's update or just looking around, it's like anything. Sometimes you need to take an active role in changing something for the greater good. Doesn't mean other communities aren't important.
Yeah.
It's not mutually exclusive, and it's not one in, one out. You can do something great for a particular part of society. It doesn't mean you don't want to do other things for other parts of society. And I think when you've got inequality, you've just got to tackle all those areas. So I don't feel that personally, but maybe I'm not the perfect person to answer it.
Well, Henry, Priya has just said in the chat you've hit the nail on the head. So
yeah.
Great.
I'll just give my very quick take on it, and I'll pass on to you, Louise. I'll be super quick. I think that, Henry, you're absolutely right. I think that the thing that's so frustrating about working in space is we have so much data, and Dan just showed us all the data why the Black population within this industry is being impacted more than any other, very closely followed by some others, and therefore we have tailored proactive programs to address those issues. It's not based on nothing. Right. And when it comes to things like sponsorship, we also have data that shows that people of color and Black employees have a lot of trouble securing sponsors, which is why we have created this program. So I think that the good thing is we have a wealth of data, and we just have to keep throwing it at people. It's not based on nothing. This is not an equal society. I hope we get to it and we'll no longer have to do these things. But until then, we're going to be proactive about supporting the populations that require us.
And yeah, my take, to be builds on what Natalie and Henry have said. It's the evidence is there. Dan's figures showed that there's other stats and evidence out there that shows that the opportunity and the representation isn't there. And so yet this is a proactive scheme in order to encourage and foster and change the tide on those figures. So it's not discriminatory. It's about trying to get closer to equality.
Brilliant. Thanks, Louise. And another great question, which obviously getting some thumbs up in the chat, is have you ever considered incorporating reverse mentorship into the programme? Natalie's nodding, so I'm going to hand it over to you.
Yes, so we hope through our structured process, like that is the idea, is that happens naturally because you're having structured conversations about topics that, you know, the both the sponsee and the sponsor speak and share. So it isn't a case of just sponsor listens and gives advice. The sponsor also should be taking a proactive part in those two-way conversations. What we might need to do is make that a little bit more overt, because I think, you know, we've had very detailed feedback that the sponsors have got a lot out of this process, and I think what we need to do is do a better job of pulling out some of those some of that feedback and communicating it, and showing the benefit of this reverse mentorship element.
Brilliant. I hope that answers the question for everyone that was asking that one. Any other questions I want to shout out? There are no more in the chat at the moment.
While that's happening as well, I just wanted to plug that there also doesn't always need to be a cost attached to these type of programs. Of course, the BRIM sponsorship program is something structured that you can sign on to, but there's also a BRIM free sponsorship toolkit, so you can absolutely just take the process and reconfigure it to something that suits your organization and your business. So I'll pop that in the chat, but there's a link to download it. It's free. And of course, there are many other kind of sponsorship frameworks out there online. So in any case, this is something that you can easily kind of implement and configure in a way that suits you and your business. I just wanted to highlight that as a potential piece of information.
Thanks, Itty. Well, brilliant. I mean, thanks again for the conversation. I think it's so helpful, as the whole point of these sessions is just to bring the actions to life. I think it's just so helpful to hear from two people that have gone through the programme, for your honesty about some of the challenges, particularly at the beginning of the process, but with the benefits that you've both, and it sounds like the wider business has just benefited enormously. So thank you so much for that. It just remains to say, we obviously flagged the fact that we're all getting together on the 12th. Please do come along to that if you can. It's so nice to see everyone in a room together. That we're doing the All In Census again on March the 12th. So hopefully you know about that already and it's in your diary, but I will be writing to every sort of industry leader over the next couple of days with the link itself. If you go to the All In Hub now, there's a countdown already. It's started. So if you don't for some reason get the link in your business or you're freelance or whatever, you know that on March the 12th, just after midnight, you can go online. You don't have to do it that early, but that's when it launches. You can go on and take part. It's really, as you've heard from everyone sort of just picking up on Dan's stats today, it's just vital that we all sort of have our say. It absolutely shapes the industry action and continues to do so. So really appreciate the time, 15 minutes max on March the 12th. And that's it, I think, from us. I can't believe we've actually finished on time, which is, I think, a record for these sessions. I hope that's not lots of questions suddenly coming, because I can see 9 comments in the chat, but I think they're just all saying thank you so much to our amazing speakers. Thanks again to Itty for putting it all together, and to Dan. And we'll see you all really soon. I think we'll be coming back hopefully after the All In Census, obviously with the findings, but we've got some more actions to talk about that we've been updating as well. So keep an eye on your inbox and we'll see you soon. Have a great day, everyone.
Thanks all.
Thanks. Thank you.